Hello everybody, Gisele Grenier here. In this video lesson, I'm going to be answering some Q&As, and this particular one is what's the big difference between brush mixing and palette knife mixing. So I'm going to explain just how what it means to me, and then I'll do a little bit of an example, then you can judge if it's something you want to do for yourself. So palette knife mixing is taking a palette knife, mixing all the colors on the palette, then taking your brush, picking them up, and then painting. Or mixing all the colors on the palette with your palette knife and then taking the palette knife and painting. So, but the whole thing is taking the palette knife and mixing everything. Brush mixing is where you're loading the colors onto the brush, mixing it, and then painting. Myself, unless I'm looking for something super specific, I like brush mixing better because it tends to make the colors a bit more mottled and a bit more fresh. So let me give you an example. First with a sky. So I'm going to paint, this is just a piece of unprimed paper. I'm not even going to bother priming it because it's just a demo. I'm going to paint a sky. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, what we'll do is we'll do this. And I'll make this one palette knife mixed and then brush mixed. Okay. So if we're going to do a sky, and I've got some gesso here, and so we're going to take that. And let's say I want my sky to be a bit more of the ultramarine blue, and we'll take that and we'll mix that up. Okay, well I know I'm going to need a bit of a darker one, so I'm going to take a bit more ultramarine blue. Let's go over here. And I'm thinking, do I want this a bit more gray? Well, let me take a little bit of yellow. Oh, I guess I should have told you what colors I was using, right? Oops. Okay, let me go over the colors. I just got right into the painting. Okay, so, all right. Should I start again? Hi, I'm Gisele. I'm going to be painting today. Here's what I'm using. DecoArt Traditions, Phthalo Green Yellow, Phthalo Green Blue, Phthalo Blue, Ultramarine Blue, Permanent Alizarin Crimson, Hansa Yellow Light, Yellow Oxide. I do have some Titanium White, but I'm almost out, so I'm going to be substituting it with the DecoArt Traditions White Gesso. Sorry about that. Oops. I just have a plastic knife, a flat brush, and an oval brush. No biggie. All right, so blah, 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 covered everything, and now I'm just making my paint a little bit more gray, and I did just added a little bit of alizarin crimson and hence a yellow light to that. Just grade it up just a little bit. Okay, so we've got that done, right? And now we basically, I'm going to dampen my brush, and I'm going to take a little bit of white. See, I brush mixed, automatically brush mixed. Let's just load this. And basically, now I'm going to paint the sky, a little bit more water. And I'm just going to paint that. And I need a little bit more of the dark. Let's go back over here. And I'll just bring that down. Okay, so that's basically, you can see with the paper separating, the bubbles are. I glued some sheets together. So, pros and cons. Pro, I guess you can mix the colors all up ahead of time, which comes in handy if you're doing portrait painting, mixing up your colors all ahead of time. That doesn't mean you're never going to brush mix, but mixing up your mixes ahead of time to save time. That would be a good thing. The colors are completely uniform. There's no, there's no differences, yeah. It's going to be up to you. To be completely honest, it's going to be up to you. So now, how I would do a sky by brush mixing, I'm going to take my white, come over here, then I'll load a little bit of blue, come over here, and let me load a little bit of crimson and a little bit of yellow. Too much crimson. Ooh. Oh, but look at that. I could do a nice pink sky. Okay, so there we go. And I'll take up a little bit more white, come over here, and I'll just come right in here And go into this, come over here. I'll pick up a little bit more white, and I can come in here. Let's get some different values. What we're doing is getting a little bit of cloud. And can you see the difference of what's happening now? Is I can come in and choose, pick up a bit more blue if I want, and come in here and just, I have different variations of the sky, and it looks like there's natural clouds happening. I don't know about you, but I like that so much better because there's more energy in it. Okay, and see what I did? Vice versa. Vice versa. You guys are probably screaming through the camera. You got it backwards. So there you go. So it has a little bit more energy and it's flat. And then what I can do, so if I want to continue on with this, I would then palette knife mix more colors, add them in. But this one here, I can just continue on. Let's get some more of that pink in there. Because I can see where some of the paint was thin. Just come in, take a bit more white and come in here, and I can just mix right on the canvas or on the paper, and now we have something that looks like clouds. It's not for everybody. You kind of have to figure out, you know, what effect you're going for. Let me just ground some. Put a little bit of ground here. You kind of have to figure out the effect you're going for. See, even with this one here, taking the yellow and the green and just getting something in there. A lot of it has to do too with, you know, the brush technique and stuff like that. But you see a lot more variations in color in the paint, whereas taking the palette knife, mix, and everything would end up looking like that. It would just be really, really flat. Now, not saying one is better than the other. Let me just, so we're going to pretend that this was palette knife mix. Just get something in there. So it's a lot more flat, and then we have a lot more interesting colors. Again, not saying that one is right and one is wrong. The difference is basically is the look that you're going for. Now, when it comes to painting landscapes, I kind of like myself, I prefer doing the brush mixing on the palette and the majority of it on the actual canvas or substrate, whatever you're working on. Just because landscapes are so full of its textures and all the nuances, and you know, you've got lights and darks, and you know, colors are shifting. You have bright greens, dark greens, and all that other stuff. But on the other hand, if you're working for something like, let's say you're doing a portrait, or you're painting glass, or you're painting like a piece of white satin, that's where you may want to then brush mix or palette knife mix, where the color is completely, you're making a new color, okay, without any modeling or changes in the mix. You're making a solid new color, like 1 part red, 1 part blue, completely mix that up, and you can even scrape that, put it onto a new area of your palette paper, and that way it's a brand new color. Brush mixing is basically doing the color mixing with your brush, but you're not completely mixing it all the way. You're leaving some variations in there. Okay, so the next experiment or the next demonstration I just want to show you is what you can do is when you're working with palette knife mixing versus brush mixing is a tree. So if we're going to think about doing a tree, and see, with oils I would just do this with an oil. So let's say we come in here and we're going to sketch. We're going to put a tree here, and let's put another tree here, and we're going to put some stuff here. And let's go up a little bit higher and over here. So what I'm looking at now with my sketching is looking for all this negative space. And Michael Ann was asking a little while ago about, you know, the negative space. It's all the air around. And if you guys want to, you know, want another demonstration on more of the negative space painting, just comment below and let me know, because I know some of you struggle with that. So kind of come in here, and I'm just getting the sketch done out first, and then I'll show you the benefits of the brush mixing versus the palette knife mixing. And then we're just going to have, you know, if I had some graphite sticking out. So this is just a rough outline. My goodness. Oh, it keeps it keeps going back in. It's empty. It just gives a rough outline. You can charcoal is so much better as well, but just gives a rough outline. That way, if you're having trouble getting your trees that they don't look like triangles, getting the sketch first really helps. Okay, so this is just a general shape. Let me just make these a little bit wider because I want to show you the areas that we can work with value. Okay, so got that. If we were going to use a palette knife, we would take our greens and we would mix up all our greens, mix, and eventually our palette would be full of all these colors that we may or may not use. With the brush mixing, I can, depending on what colors I'm using, I could have maybe 3 piles, and I could just pick up paint and go into that existing pile. And because I know how the colors sit on the color wheel, and I know where they lean and where they go, my colors will never turn into mud. Now, speaking about knowing where the colors lean on the color wheel, if you're more interested in basically learning about color, mixing the new colors, how to avoid mud, which is the biggie, I've got now if you're watching this in the Facebook group, you already know, but I've got a free color mixing course and challenge going on in the Facebook group. The beginner part is already done. The foundations part is already done, so you can check that out. So if I was to turn around, first thing we got to set up is the trunk. Well, I don't have any brown, so why don't we make some? So basically, I'm going to take some phthalo blue, and I'm going to take some alizarin crimson, and I'm going to take some Hansa yellow light. Okay, and then we'll just, and I'm not going to worry right now about the pencil lines. I'm just going to press a little bit. I'm trying to have it where you guys can actually see. I would normally just do it this way, but you can't see. So I'm working sideways. Now, as I'm painting this, I can see this part here has a little bit more blue, and here it's a little bit more green. Didn't make up enough. Did make up enough, so what? I can always make up more. All right, so let's just make that a little bit thicker. And I can just pick up a little bit more blue, a bit more red. Let's go to a little bit of yellow oxide. And I'm just going to take whatever's left over here, and let's just get that. Let's get that in there. Okay, really dark, really dark. I'm going to dry out my brush. Not dry out, blot out my brush. And now if I wanted the leaves, no, I can take, I've got a phthalo green yellow, I've got a phthalo green blue. I don't even really need those. I can go straight to phthalo blue with some type of yellow. But, we're going to work the dark areas first. I could have used the same mixture, so let's, dark mixture. I like how phthalo blue works. It's a nice, or phthalo green blue. That's a really nice one. Let's take a little bit of yellow oxide, and then we're going to hit that with a little bit of crimson. And then we can come in here and we can just, so you see how I'm kind of turning the brush around? Because part of my brush has a little bit of yellow oxide on it. This one has a little bit more of the green, and here's a little bit of alizarin crimson. And I can turn the brush depending on what I'm going for. I'm thinking, I want to make that a little bit darker. Let's take a little bit more crimson. And let's just, there, look at that, see? I don't want it to be, I want it to have some air in there. Oh, let's get a little bit more blue in there. Then come in here. Let's get some dark areas in here. So where the trees are going to be really dark is inside the branches, where it's like very dense. That's where it's going to be dark. Turning my brush. But you can see all the variations in color now, and all in the same pile of paint. So, okay, well, let's do the next one. So this tree here is a little bit, let's bring this a little bit more forward. So we can do it now with, let's say, phthalo green yellow. And I can come in, same mixture, A little bit of yellow, come in here, and still working. It's still dark, but it's just a different type of yellow. And wouldn't necessarily do this in a painting. I'm just showing you the differences between the different colors. So this one's a much more softer green because I used phthalo green, blue, alizarin crimson, and then the two yellows. This one here, the green's a little bit more cleaner because I used phthalo green yellow with the Hansa yellow light. And you can do this with oh, that's a little bit thick. That's a little bit thick. Let's break that up a little bit. Let's break that up a little bit. Just using the edge of the brush. So I got a little bit fixing here. There we go. Trees are in the background. You got to keep them wispy. They can say, oh, but you know what? I kind of like this green here. You notice we haven't really done any white with this. Okay, well, I still want to keep the colors quite saturated. I like this green here. Let's put a little bit of that reflected color in here. Well, I'm going to take a little bit of this, take a little bit more green, take a little bit more yellow, keeping in mind that Hansa yellow light is quite transparent. And then I can take, where I have the yellow on the brush, I can come in and I can just hit it with the heavier yellow, then turn it around where the shadows is and turn it on the other side of the brush where it's more green. Same here, I can hit it with a little bit more of the yellow. Okay. See that. Now with the palette knife, the only difference is that all these colors here, I would mix everything on the palette ahead of time. But so I would have, look at this size. I would have, I don't know, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different little puddles of paint. And for this, everything here, I just used this here. And the colors there's different colors in here. So then once that's dry, I can come in and say, okay, well now it's time to, I gotta add some shadows in there. I can turn around and say, well, I'm gonna take some phthalo green blue, some phthalo blue, a little bit of crimson. I'm working with the primary colors here. A little bit, I'm gonna take some yellow oxide. A little bit more blue. Now, creating all the colors that I'm doing with the primary colors, go through the course to learn about all that. Easy way, just grab some of the neutrals, let's say like burnt umber or burnt sienna. Now if I want to go with something really dark, I can come in here and just pop in some darks right in there. Oh, I better break up a little bit more dark here underneath the grassy areas where it's shadowed. We got to get values in there. You need dark to show light and light to show dark. Not so much up at the top because there's a lot of sky showing through, but where it's quite dense. Then, oh, okay, well, yeah, I like that. Now I want to get that a little bit brighter green. Let me grab a little bit more yellow right here and come right in there. Just putting a little bit of hit of yellow right there. Let's put another one here. Let's see if we can get a nice splash. Get some texture in there. See, the sun is hitting, and I'm turning my brush. Now, we haven't even talked about, the light source coming in. But I'm mixing the colors right on the brush. Okay, just see you close up there. See? Close up, it looks kind of weird, but when you sit back and oh, this is really, really pretty. But again, brush mixing is not for everybody, but is to try it. Try it and see if it's something that you really like to try, and because you never know what it's going to do. It's like I love artwork with texture, like where I can see the paint and stuff like that. Some people don't. I like it, so give it a try. All right, so hopefully that gives you a bit of an understanding of the differences between mixing all your colors with a palette knife and then doing it with a brush mix. All right, so the difference is you're going to take up a lot more space on the palette. Your colors are a lot more even, completely even toned. You'll probably waste paint because you'll end up having to make more if you want this exact same color. Whereas brush mixing is that you're doing the mixing on the palette and on the canvas. When would you not use one? that's completely up to you. You could do palette, you can mix up all your colors ahead of time if you're doing portrait painting. That will save you time, and the colors, oils last a lot longer. If you want to do oils with acrylics, you got to be careful. You might want to add some extender in there so that way you're not wasting the paint. With a portrait with brush knife mixing, there are some amazing artists out there that, that Richard Schmidt's another one that can mix a lot of the stuff right on the brush, right onto the canvas. That way the colors look so fresh. There's really not a reason when you can't use a palette knife mix on this X painting or a brush mixed technique on this painting. It's more of a personal preference. So the way, if you want your paintings to be much more smoother or fine, or if you're painting, let's say, glass, you may want to use a palette knife mix. But if you want something that's got a lot more energy to it, a lot of action, it's something that's organic, you may want to go with brush mixing. Best way to do it, just try it and see. So my challenge to you is going to be to take a piece of paper, divide it in half, and you're going to do the exact same technique I just did. Okay, exact same technique I just did. You're going to paint the sky and just paint some grass by palette knife mixing your mix. Okay, then you're going to do the exact same technique by creating a sky and grass, and then paint the trees, mixing your colors on with a brush on the palette and on the canvas. Now, your challenge for bonus points is to replicate the trees. So you're going to paint the trees. The technique with the brush is to apply the paint, but it's to pre-mix the colors on the palette with your palette knife. Then take your brush into those mixtures and then paint the trees. That's going to be your bonus challenge, which is why I didn't do it, because I don't want you to see how I do it. I want to see how you're going to do it. All right, so take a picture, post it below. If you're watching this on YouTube, head on over to the Facebook group and post the pictures there, and add some text to your pictures as to what you did, like a palette knife, which was a brush, the brush that you used, the paints that you used. That way, somebody who's new into the group, that's a real beginner, has an idea of what you're doing and can then follow along with the exercise. Alrighty. So, hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to clean up and get ready for the next lesson. Until then, stay inspired.